Hey guys, so I'm going to do a brief demo here and talk a little bit about the equipment that I use for finishing. I've had some requests here recently just to talk a little bit about the equipment I use and people that want to know a little bit more about it. So I figured I'd take this opportunity to do a brief video talking about the equipment and actually show the equipment in use, just focused on the equipment. First of all, the gun I'm going to be using for spraying the fast dry vinyl sealer on some oak shelves I need to finish is a Graco G15. It is an Air Assisted Airless HVLP compliant. And I know that's a mouthful, but if you look it up on the internet, just Google, it'll kind of give you a really good description of what it is. Google gives some pretty good descriptions. Ask is another one, but it's your personal preference. So you can Google that and it'll give you a better idea as far as what it is I'm talking about, those of you that aren't really clear what Air Assisted Airless HVLP means. And then the second gun I'm going to be using is a Kremlin MVX. Now those of you who do wood finishing and know about Kremlin, you know Kremlin's reputation. Kremlin has a very good reputation and it's worldwide. But I had gotten my hands on a Kremlin MVX and a Kremlin 1014 pump here within the last 6, 7, 8 months, and kind of pieced it together, and now I've actually got a full working Kremlin unit. But anyways, the gun is a Kremlin MVX. It's Air Assisted Airless, HVLP compliant. It's also trade named or trademarked as Airmix. They've got this technology in their air cap where they've taken the Air Assisted Airless technology and they've taken it to a higher transficiency rate. Anyways, they've basically designed their air cap and their gun body so that way they've probably got one of the most highest transfer efficiencies of the guns on the market in the Air Assisted Airless HVLP compliant lineup. So I'll get some specs of this equipment at the end of the video so you can just kind of get a brief idea. And also just to let you know that most of this equipment that I use, especially for finishing, is all stuff that I have pieced together off of eBay, or I've gotten a dirt cheap deal through a distributor. But most of it is stuff that I've found on eBay, and I'm not a huge eBay fan by no means. But when it comes to some of this good known equipment, it's hard to go wrong, especially if you buy something that might be a piece of junk. If you're willing to spend a few dollars into it, you'll have a gem when you're done. Now, it might not be cosmetically like a gem, but as far as performance, it'll be the same thing as buying new. But there are deals out there to be had. You just got to watch for them. So with that being said, I'm going to get the finishing going here, but like I said, Google is a really good place to look for a definition of Air Assisted Airless. It'll give you basically, the whole concept behind it and how it came about. So anyways, I'm going to get some finishing going here, and you'll actually get to see the guns in action. sealer gun is a Graco G15, Air Assisted Airless, HVLP compliant, and it is supplied by a high pressure pump also made by Graco, which is a 395 ST Pro, which is actually an electric unit, electric contract unit designed for the building contractor, painting contractor. It's basically designed for portability. Rather than running off compressed air, it runs off electricity. The pump is as original as it was the day I got it as is today. The only difference is I did add a small air regulator down by the pump, so I can hook up a compressed air hose from the shop air here and have the additional air assisted part for atomizing air. And from there's just another 1/4 inch air line that goes from that regulator all the way up to the gun handle. So, and I'll show you that here at the end. But anyways, a new package today, if you go with an air operated package versus electric package, an air operated package I want to say is about $1,800, and that model is a Graco Merkur ES. It's basically an entry-level air assisted airless package, and the thing is with the air operated units or the air operated pumps is they offer them in different ratios. And basically what it is it's a linear air motor that moves the piston and the pump up and down, and the ratio for every manufacturer is different for each model. For example, the Graco Merkur ES is available in a 15:1 or a 30:1 ratio. What that means is for every 1 pound of air pressure, you will get 15 or 30 pounds of fluid pressure depending on the ratio you have purchased. The other gun that I'll be talking about a little bit later is actually a 10:1 ratio, which is an air operated pump. So, and I believe an entry-level Merkur ES 15:1 ratio, I think in stainless steel, runs about $1,800, maybe closer to $2,000, not sure. The actual Merkur ES pump is the exact same lower pump that's on my electric 395 ST Pro. They've had very good luck with that pump, evidently. According to all the bulletins I've read from them, is that they've had a great track record with it, so they basically wanted to offer it for the professional furniture finisher, the small cabinet shop, whichever, in an air operated unit. So they also have a 30:1 ratio on that, and then instead of getting a G15 gun, you would get a G40. The difference between the G15 and the G40 is the amount of fluid pressure that they will hold or sustain. The G15 will hold 1,500 pounds, the G40 will hold 4,000 pounds. I don't know where in the wood industry you need to hold 4,000 pounds fluid pressure in an air assisted airless application. It's probably more so for the aerospace and military and stuff like that, where the coatings are much more durable, thicker in viscosity, higher in solids, and so on and so forth. So anyways, so that is the sealer gun. So okay, I'm going to take a minute to talk about the gun that I use for spraying the final top coat, or the top coat gun. It is a Kremlin MVX gun. First of all, those of you who do wood finishing for a living probably have heard about Kremlin, or own a Kremlin, or know somebody who has one. Kremlin is a European-based company, and I believe they're probably headquarters in France originally, and maybe I think they still are, I'm not 100% positive. But Kremlin is pretty much known worldwide, and they're new to the US probably in the last 30 years. They're really big in Europe and France before that, but I'd say probably in the last 30 years they got introduced to the US and have a handful of dealers, and now there's probably a couple dealers in most every state. So anyway, so it's a Kremlin MVX Air Assisted Airless gun, and the pump used to supply that is a Kremlin 1014 pump, which is an air operated pump. The Kremlin 1014 was very popular for about the last 20 years, and still today you'll find it in a lot of cabinet shops. But just recently, within the last year or two, maybe a couple years, Kremlin has introduced a new air assisted airless gun and a new pump. The new gun is Excite, and the pump is an EOS. E as in Ernie, O as in Oscar, S as in Sam. Both the gun and the pump are completely different design from their previous models. The Excite gun, basically they changed the aerodynamic design of it. It's a little bit, supposedly a little bit more ergonomic. It's got a better airflow, they say, throughout the gun body. It's got more of a laminar airflow, less corners, and I think it's a little bit lighter weight, and I think it's got a little bit lighter trigger pull. Different air cap. The tips are still the same, but the air caps are different, and along with everything else. And I believe they have added a built-in swivel down by the fluid filter at the base of the gun. So as far as the 1014 pump, that is a 10-to-1 pump. That means for every 1 pound of air pressure I put into it, I get 10 pounds of fluid. And it's been a very reliable pump. I got it used, and it's been great to me. When I got it, actually got it off eBay, and it was literally stripped down to just the pump. It didn't have an air or fluid regulator, no pickup tube, no fittings of any kind, so it was bare. With the gun and the hoses and the pickup tube and the regulators and everything, I probably have about $1,000 into it at the most. But keep in mind, the 1014, the stock is still available yet. I think they're selling for about $3,000. So, yeah, and that is with an MVX gun. So, you know, there are deals out there to be had. If you're a professional finisher where this is actually your living and it's your bread and butter, it might be worth the $3,000. But then again, there's still some great deals out there if you're at the right place at the right time. So with that being said, I'll just kind of give you a walkthrough of the actual equipment, show you the equipment, the pump and the gun and the hose and all that, so you have a better understanding as far as you know, what to expect. Okay, this is the gun that I use for spraying sealer. It's a Graco G15, just as I had mentioned earlier. And it is an Air Assisted Airless, and get the cord out of the way here. You can see I've got a red air hose here as well, and that gets hooked up to this cheap mini air regulator here in the bottom, and then I plug my compressed air into here. Got a little drain filter here to keep moisture out. Anyways, it's actually, well, this says Sherwin-Williams Nova on it, but actually is a Graco 395 ST Pro. It's been a great pump. However, the throat seal has really gone bad. It still holds pressure very well, but I'm looking at getting a rebuild kit for it and just going over it and doing it, and get another 10 years out of it. So it's been a great pump. As I mentioned earlier, Merkur ES is an entry-level air operating unit for Graco. You would be getting this gun, and actually this pump is the exact same pump that's on the Merkur ES. It's just, instead of having this electric motor, this is a DC motor converted into AC from this control panel, and having a rotary cam, it's just basically a linear motor that just moves up and down with air pressure. So it's kind of like an air cylinder almost. So anyways, that is the pump, and the only thing I did is I had added a T here at the outlet of the pump and added a pressure gauge. However, that's about right. I didn't think the pressure gauge was working, but it doesn't work the way it should, so it should be replaced. But it does the job. So once it's set up, it's pretty much good to go. So, and as far as the hose, this is one thing I kind of wanted to touch base on a little bit. This hose, as you can see, is pretty flexible. This hose it's called an exit flex. Let's see if I can pull this up here. There we go. Exit flex. Swiss made. 5,000 working pressure. Here we go. It's an 1/8 inch inside diameter, or 3.2 millimeters. Maybe it's 1.2. Oh, anyways, it's an 1/8 inch inside diameter. And I got this from a local paint supplier. I think I want to say it was like a Diamond Vogel. They had it, and they swore that a lot of their painting contractors that spray like lacquers and polyurethanes in houses for remodel or new construction, they swear that this hose was the best. If you have one of these Graco models that have the smart control in it, the 25-foot exit flex hose will not work. The pump doesn't know if it's coming or going just because there is no give in this hose. It's very rigid but very flexible, so it doesn't have the capability of expanding much like a contractor hose would. So if you do it, I would highly recommend the 50-foot hose, and you know, it's very flexible. So here's a look at the front of it. Yeah, there we go. Now I know why I couldn't find it. Graco stamps their tip model on the side. This one here is a 511. What that stands for is the pattern size and the orifice size. The first number, or the first two numbers, would be your pattern size if it's a 4-digit number. If it's a 3-digit number, it'd be the first number. And basically what you do to get your pattern size is you take the first number, or the first two numbers, like I said, if it's a 3 or 4-digit number, and you double it. So being that this one's a 5, I have a 10-inch pattern. That's basically rated at 12 inches. The 11 stands for the orifice size. That is the size of this little tiny hole in that slot. So this is actually kind of small for what I'm doing. I should probably look at maybe getting a 513 or a 515 to be more in line with the Kremlin gun that I use. But it's a little on the slower side, but it still works. So maybe when this one wears out, I'll replace it with a larger one, like so maybe like a 511, or I'm sorry, a 515 or a 615. So, and here's the air cap, and there is an alignment pin. Let's see if I can do this here. It's hard to do it one-handed. Can't even see what I'm doing through the camera. There we go. You know, it snaps in a slot inside the air cap. Yes, the air cap needs to be cleaned too, but it still works. The nice thing about the Graco is they got this little pin here, kind of right below my finger here. That pin lines up with the air cap, or the spray gun. That little pin right there. And if you turn it all the way around, you get your pattern at a 90 degrees vertical. So it's kind of an alignment pin, kind of neat. So, alright, let's look at the Kremlin gun. Okay, here is the gun that I use for spraying the top coat. It's a Kremlin 1014, and this one's an air-driven pump. There's a couple regulators here. This one controls the fluid pressure, and this one controls the atomizing air. I got this little desiccant filter in here to help eliminate any moisture in the air from the air compressor. And now, this hose is not quite as nice. It's still pretty flexible, but still on the coily side. It's thicker. This is actually a 3/16 hose. I want to say this is also made by Exit Flex, but this one is just a bigger hose. It's actually about the same size as the little red air hose here, but the red air hose is more flexible than this one. But what happened was I was originally using this gun with the yellow Exit Flex hose, a 25-footer. And what I found is with the coating I'm using, as the level in the pail goes down, obviously the viscosity raises because of evaporation. And right now I am spraying at, looks like right now I'm sitting at 550, which is a little on the high side. That should be around 500. But with the yellow hose, because of the restriction, I would find myself all the way up to 600, 650, 700, even 800 pounds at times. And talking with my Kremlin rep, he had suggested that you should really look into a 3/16 hose. So I went back to the 3/16 hose, and like I said, the pump definitely performs better, but the hose isn't quite as flexible. So I'm still in the process of trying to find that perfect 1/8-inch hose that, or 3/16 hose that may be more flexible, and I think that's going to be a pretty tough find. But anyways, this was the pump that I had mentioned earlier that I had gotten bare. When I had gotten it, it literally was from here to here. That was it. I didn't have the fitting, I didn't have the hose, I didn't have any air regulators, so basically it was just a pump with no fittings. And so I ended up having to get this little fitting right here, and then the hose, obviously, the pickup tube, which mounts on the bottom here. Had to get that, the regulators, and you know, I had a different gun I was using at the time. I was using a Binks AA 1500, but that was it. So the pump itself, I think I got for like 250 bucks off of eBay, and like I said, it was bare, but it was clean. This is basically the way I'd gotten it, you know, just a little outside cosmetic, but other than that, it was a clean pump. Got the pickup tube. This is stainless steel. Everything on the pump is stainless steel except for the fittings on this hose. This is actually just carbon steel. I probably should make that stainless steel, but with the pre-cat I've never had an issue with it, so I'm just going to leave it alone. And then here is the MVX gun. There's the front of it, and let me show you here what I was talking about earlier about the pins in the air cap in the tip. Hold on. Okay. Here, as you can see, there are these two pins pretty much on top of the picture. And these pins help align the tip, so that way your pattern, the fan itself, is always between the horns on the air cap. So these two pins line up. Let's see if I can do this here. Like that. There you go. The problem is the older tips from the MX and the MRX and the MRs, they only had a single pin, and I actually have one right here. I was able to find one, and as you can see, it's only got one notch in it, and as you can see, one pin is not going to work very well. Yep. See, I mean, it's just basic math. It's not gonna line up because there's nothing for that one to go through. So you can't use old stock tips in new air caps. It doesn't work. So that's where Kremlin made a design change, and I don't think that was for that reason. I think that they just actually made you know, a better tip. Like you see, this one here is all stainless steel with tungsten carbide in the front, versus this one here looks to be like it might be brass with tungsten carbide. This is actually an old tip. Design's pretty much the same except for this notch here, and like I said, in the fact that they went from brass to stainless steel. Now, Kremlin rates their tips differently. This one here looks like it is a, should know this, it is a 14134. You can't read it very well, but I do remember that's what I gotten with it. Their tip numbering is way different than Graco's. The 14134 basically is a, let's see here, 12 or 13 inch pattern at about 10 inches with the 16 thousandths orifice or hole size, that little hole there between the slot, or in the slot there. To know this, you can go on the internet and go to Kremlin's website, or you can probably just Google it too, enter Kremlin Airmix tip chart, and it'll give you a chart with what the numbers stand for. The 14 references the orifice size, and then the 134 is the, I think the 13 stands for 13-inch pattern at 10 inches. And then the 4 is the series. There's also a tips that end in a 2, and what the difference is if you look down where that white O-ring is, in the 2 there's a smaller hole there. It's basically like a second orifice, so they'll break the material before exiting the tip, so there's like another small hole behind that white O-ring, and it's pretty evident. It's not like you have to look for it. You'll see it if you ever get your hands on a tip. There's, like I said, some stainless steel there with a small hole right after that white O-ring. That white O-ring has to be replaced occasionally because they'll start to leak, because that's actually what seats up against the nozzle there. So if you don't do that, if you don't replace it once it starts leaking, it'll start leaking into these holes in the air cap, and it'll start plugging them up. So, but other than that, that is the two guns that I used for spraying the clears. And questions or comments are welcome. Thanks for watching.